Hello, welcome to another video from the Conscious Music School. My name's Simon Siddle. Today we have the third in our series, Conscious Life Hacks for Savvy Musicians. Today's lesson, make yourself a good space to practice in. Good practice requires absorption of the mind. Absorption of the mind is a state whereby your mind is allowed to settle into its undisturbed processes without other processes either interrupting or impinging upon the ones that you are trying to concentrate on. As such, your absorption requires not only a physical peace, but an emotional peace, a sense of safety and harmony. Your practice space needs to provide this as well as everything else. So, answer these questions to yourself, and this will reveal whether your practice space right now is serving you well or whether you could do better. 1. Do the neighbours complain? If you have anybody around the place where you are practicing and they are in any kind of combative mood about you making noise, just find a better place to practice. You do not need that kind of emotionally charged war around such a precious subject as your music. In the midst of playing or studying music, we get into mind states which can open up the capacity for us to be very deeply imprinted in those moments. We can become very tender in our emotional and mental states. The last thing you want at that moment is some angry-looking person going, "Shut up!" Second question, do people who you even live with barge in and interrupt? You need to make sure that whoever shares the space with you, they understand that you do need some certain boundaries around that place when you are practicing in it. And maybe they need to knock on the door. Maybe they need to just make sure they read the sign on the door that says, "Don't knock on the door for at least 2 hours unless the place is burning down." Get yourself some decent boundaries around that place so that you can feel safe to drop into whatever mind state you need to be while you're practicing without fear of disturbance or sudden need to go and do tasks for other people or to suddenly change your plans because of what other people are doing in the rooms around you. Third, is the room itself where you're practicing roomy enough? And I don't just mean roomy enough for you to get around it, though that's obviously a practical consideration. I mean, is it roomy enough for the sound you are making in there? If you have an instrument that has either a very loud or a very piercing tone, the last thing you want is to be essentially trapped in that small room with it blasting back in your ears at the time. Make sure that you put into your considerations of what room you choose as your practice room, the room required for the sound of your instrument, as well as your functioning in that room. Further to that idea of the size of the room, is it well arranged in there? Are the instruments and the furniture arranged in a manner which produces the best workflow for you? Or are you tripping over mixing desks and sets of wires and 13 guitars stacked up against a wall? Make it a place where the energy can flow easily, and then you can flow easily in there as well. Further to this idea of keeping the energy flowing in there, is the place well lit and well aired? I know a lot of people in their considerations for sound end up practicing in basements. This is clever in one way, in that you are actually, yes, avoiding disturbing a lot of other people sometimes by practicing in there. Do you want your music, though, to be permanently associated in your mind with underground dwelling? Does not some of your music deserve to be practiced in a place of good light and good air and beauty? Further to this idea of keeping energy going, is it clean in there? Now, yes, I know, you're thinking, this is my workplace, what does clean have to do with it? Well, as we get more and more conscious, we have to take into account subtler and subtler possibilities for disturbance, for pollution, that's the word I'm looking for, in these circumstances. It's a well agreed upon thing amongst people who have got psychic sensibilities that a thick coating of dust on anything is actually holding a record of the memories of the things that were settling in that room, or rather the things that were going on in that room while that dust was settling. If you've ever cleared out a room that has a lot of dust in the corners but seemed clean in the middle, you'll find that you can actually function, think clearer and feel better in that room just for clearing out the corners well. This is something you should be considering with a practice room all the time. Does your practice room contain anything inspiring and beautiful in the way of furniture or art or anything else? Or is your room mainly filled with energy-zapping junk? We want to keep the room as sparse, as empty as possible of objects that may have had a use for an hour while they were being used, but then really need to be put back away again because they are blocking the flow of thought and energy and even sound in the room. Make sure that things don't pile up. Make sure that you don't even use the place simply to store certain objects because you can't think of anywhere else to put them. All of this will be disturbing to your musical process in the end. Talking of energy zapping junk, are you frying yourself with electromagnetic fields in your practice room? Now, I know some people, the manner of the music they play and the instrument that they play, they cannot help but have some electromagnetic fields around them. But it's quite possible, if you use a lot of electronics in your practice and your playing, that you are zapping yourself in a manner which leaves you tired and lacking in concentration and perhaps even unhealthier physiologically because of the amount of time you are spending bathing in strong electromagnetic fields. However much you enjoy the music that you are producing by doing this, it is important to understand that you are not doing your body, or your concentration for that matter, and your mind, any favours by sitting in these fluctuating and strong electromagnetic fields for hours on end. First thing you need to consider about doing that is taking a break regularly, but an even better thing to consider doing is to move whatever control surfaces you have for these electronics out into a place in the room where you can reach them and yet be a considerable distance from the main body of electronics actually producing the sound or computing what's going on. Another thing to consider: have you dedicated this space to music? Or are you using it to watch soaps and gangster films while arguing on a mobile phone and painting with enamel paints and anything else you can think of that might be polluting and disturbing the vibe and the energy in that room? If you really want your musicianship to work at absolute tip-top form, you need your environment to help you all the way with it. And the more you pollute that environment with other things where you're simply using the room for other circumstances because it's room to be used, well, it's a little like using a church as a factory. The very decision to use it for something unholy in that circumstance can destroy some of the feel, some of the instant emotional hit you might get when you walk into that room to begin your day's practice. Whatever practice room you have, you need to love it and respect its finely tuned purpose for what you're doing in there. The more you simply unconsciously use that space, the harder it will be to produce a constant vibe in there which when you walk into it at the start of the day will set you off right for your playing. If you treat that room as purely a room for the practice of the art of music and for studying the art of music, the vibe will become monothematic, if you like, and every time you step into that room from then on, whether you believe that it's subtle energy in the room or it's simply your mind being conditioned to your behaviours when you see those visual stimuli as you walk into that room, whichever way it is, it will work. You will walk into that room and you will be in business mode to do music. Finally, on that same idea, can you find something to put in that room which represents a talismanic object as a key to your prime vibrational state when you're practicing and studying? If you can find one object that inspires you, that catches your attention, that you find beautiful, that you'd like in that room, then put it somewhere in that room where you can see when you're playing. And every time you come to a place in your practice or your playing where you think you are running at optimum capacities and you're producing beautiful music in that moment, this is the time to look at that object and to imprint that object with the energies of what you're doing in that moment. If you solely interact with that object in those moments and no other, it will become a repository of that vibe, which you can then use as a power bank when you're not feeling it later on. So there we have it, some considerations about what you can do with your practice space in order to make it work at its optimum for you. Remember, keep it up like a shrine. Fresh energy is vital. You like that video? Great, then hit the like button. And if you want to hear more like that, please hit the subscribe button and the bell icon as well. The Conscious Music School is a brand new venture and can really do with any help that you might offer, even if that help is simply posting this video somewhere where you think somebody else might find it useful. I thank you very much in advance for that. But more importantly, get involved. One of the missions of the Conscious Music School is to start deep and complex conversations about music, musicians and musicianship. So tell me in the comments below, what aspect of or object in your practice space do you consider an absolute godsend? Or if you like, what is it that you simply cannot abide within your practice space? Or if you want to get really involved, you could come and check us out over at theconsciousmusicschool.com, where over the coming months we'll be releasing courses for musicians and music lovers alike. Finally, I want you to know that the series that you're watching here, Conscious Life Hacks for Savvy Musicians, is in fact a very vanilla introduction to the work of the Conscious Music School. I'm producing another series entitled Deeper Considerations for Musicians. But if you want to watch that series, I'm afraid you'll have to follow me over to another platform which is not so fond of censoring people the moment they stand outside of their narrow corporate mindset. Sorry, but that's the nature of the platform that you're watching it on, as much as it is the nature of the Conscious Music School to point out such awkward truths. So come over where the air is lighter. I've left some links below. And that's all I've got for you today. Thank you ever so much for watching. I do appreciate your time and your attention, and I salute the conscious musician within you. You have a great day, and I'll see you again very soon.